Chosen one. You may feel the lingering presence of those who once tried to diminish you. There's a subtle tension when you sense people around you holding their guard, whispering behind your back, or pretending to be something they are not. These individuals who once sought to hold you down are still in the periphery of your life. You can feel it, their unspoken intentions, the false facades they wear, but you chosen one are no longer their easy target. God's hand has been upon you, and today he is saying no more. The time for being undermined and overlooked is over. You have evolved beyond their expectations, and your strength has risen in ways they never saw coming. What they tried to steal from you, your confidence, your peace, your calling, has only fueled your silent ascent. You're no longer defined by their attempts to limit you. As you reflect, chosen one, you begin to realize that the transformation you've undergone has become your ultimate victory. This victory wasn't won through confrontation or words, but through a quiet elevation that changed everything. You didn't have to fight back with anger or force. Your growth, your peace, your unwavering faith became the power that turned the battle in your favor. You've silently risen, and in that rise you've defeated everything that sought to keep you down. The victory is yours, chosen one, and it is divine. There are moments in life when others see you as small, insignificant, or easy to control. Perhaps it's because of your humble beginnings, your quiet demeanor, or the mistakes you've made in the past. Those who once underestimated you, those who thought they could predict your every move, didn't realize one crucial thing: they couldn't see the purpose God had placed on your life. They thought they had you figured out, someone to manipulate, to diminish, to mold into their expectations. But they were wrong. The world often looks at people through the lens of their circumstances, but God sees the heart. He knows your potential, your resilience, and the destiny he has set before you. Just as David was underestimated by his own brothers, who saw him as nothing more than a young shepherd boy, God knew that David was destined to be the king of Israel. In 1 Samuel 16:7, when Samuel was sent to anoint the new king, God told him, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Like David, you may have been overlooked, underestimated, and even dismissed by others. But God's vision for your life is not confined to what others see. He has been shaping and preparing you in ways that others couldn't even imagine. The very things people thought would hold you back, God has used to build you up. As you faced the whispers, the judgment, and the attempts to control you, you didn't respond with anger, bitterness, or revenge. It would have been easy to react with frustration or to lash out at those who tried to belittle you, but instead you chose to rise above. You chose to elevate yourself, not with words, but with actions. In the quiet moments, you leveled up. You allowed God to do the work in you that needed to be done. In the story of Joseph, we see a powerful example of someone who was underestimated, even by his own family. Joseph's brothers were jealous of him and sold him into slavery, thinking they had rid themselves of him forever. But God had different plans. Joseph didn't respond with anger or revenge. Instead, he trusted God. Despite the trials, the betrayals, and the injustice he faced, Joseph's faith remained strong. He rose through the ranks in Egypt, eventually becoming second in command, and when a famine struck, he was the one who could save his family. In Genesis 50:20, Joseph said to his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph's story is a testimony to the power of silent strength. His rise was not marked by confrontation, but by divine elevation. He trusted that God had a greater purpose for his life, and in doing so he became unforgettable. The people who once underestimated him never imagined he would become the one with the power to bless and restore them. Similarly, you may have been in situations where you were overlooked or dismissed, but through your quiet perseverance and faith in God, you have begun to evolve in ways they never anticipated. While they watched, they couldn't see the transformation happening within you. God was preparing you for something greater, something they couldn't see because they were too focused on what was on the outside. The beauty of your transformation is that it happened silently behind the scenes. You didn't need to announce your plans or show off your progress. Instead, you allowed God to work in the quiet of your heart to mold you into the person He created you to be. Just as Jesus grew in wisdom and stature before God, and men, you too have been growing quietly, steadily, and with purpose. In Luke 2:52 it says, "And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favour with God and man." This silent growth can sometimes be the hardest because it's not immediately visible to others. But it is in these moments of hidden growth that your character is developed, your faith strengthened, and your purpose clarified. You didn't need the applause of others to know that God was working in you. You trusted that His timing was perfect, and when the right moment came, the transformation would be undeniable. As you continued to grow, those who'd once underestimated you began to take notice. They couldn't deny the change in you. The power and strength you now carry are undeniable, and your impact will be felt far beyond what they ever imagined. Now, as you step into the future God has prepared for you, it's impossible for others to ignore the transformation. They might look back and realize how wrong they were to underestimate you, but it's no longer about proving them wrong. It's about embracing the destiny God has placed before you. The same people who once tried to hold you down now see that you have become someone they cannot ignore. The story of Esther is another powerful reminder of how God uses our transformation for His glory. Esther was an orphan raised by her cousin Mordecai and later became Queen of Persia. Though she was initially overlooked and underestimated, God's favour was upon her. When the time came, Esther's position as queen enabled her to save her people from annihilation. She didn't fight her enemies with force. She used her influence, wisdom, and courage to stand up for what was right. Her faith in God led to a divine turnaround. In Esther 4:14, Mordecai told her, "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Like Esther, you have been placed in your current position for a purpose. The silent growth you've experienced is not for nothing. It is the preparation for the powerful impact you're now able to make. You've leveled up in ways that others didn't see coming. Now your influence is greater, your faith is stronger, and your calling is clear. The person you once were, the one they underestimated, is now an unforgettable force that cannot be ignored. The journey from being underestimated to becoming unforgettable is not always easy. It requires patience, perseverance, and most importantly, trust in God's timing. When others tried to hold you down, God was lifting you up. When they couldn't see your potential, God was cultivating it. And now as you stand on the other side of the challenges, you realize that you have become someone who not only overcame, but thrived. Just as David was anointed as king despite being the youngest and least likely, just as Joseph became second in command after being sold into slavery, and just as Esther saved a nation despite being an orphan, you too are stepping into a purpose far greater than anything anyone could have anticipated. Your life has become a testimony to the fact that God's plans for you are always greater than the world's expectations. You're no longer the person they thought they had figured out. You have leveled up, and now you're unforgettable. Trust in the process and know that God has been with you every step of the way, preparing you for this moment. Your future is filled with purpose, and you're stepping into your destiny with a confidence that only comes from knowing that God is at the center of it all. In life, we often find ourselves in situations where we feel cornered, misunderstood, or underestimated. There are moments when it seems like the odds are stacked against us, as if everyone around us has already decided how our story will unfold. They've placed their bets, moved their pieces, and they think they have us trapped, their victory seemingly assured. But what they don't realize is that sometimes the most powerful moves are the ones that are quiet, subtle, and unexpected. Imagine life as a chessboard. Your opponents, those who doubted you, underestimated you, or even tried to hold you back, have positioned their pieces with confidence, believing they have you in checkmate. They think they've won. They think you're a pawn in their game, someone who can be moved and manipulated, someone whose fate is determined by their actions. But then, in a moment of divine wisdom, you make a move they never saw coming. With one quiet strategic step, you flip the entire board, turning what seemed like an inevitable loss into a victory they could never have anticipated. This is the kind of transformation that God brings into our lives when we trust Him. Just as David, a humble shepherd boy, became the king of Israel against all odds, your victory often comes not through loud confrontation but through quiet elevation. The moments when you think you're cornered, God is quietly at work preparing you for the perfect move. And when the time comes, it will not be a victory won through force or shouting, but through growth wisdom and the strength to move in ways that your opponents never saw coming. The victory that God gives isn't always loud or dramatic. In fact, some of the most powerful victories are the ones that shatter the ego of those who tried to hold you down. They thought they knew your limits, your weaknesses, and your potential. They placed their judgments on you, expecting you to remain stuck in the same place, unable to move forward. But when you outgrow them, when you evolve in ways that only God could have orchestrated, it leaves them stunned. This wasn't about proving them wrong with loud words or gestures. It wasn't about seeking revenge or fighting fire with fire. No, the real victory came in outgrowing them, becoming someone they could no longer control or predict. The transformation was internal, a quiet work that reshaped your heart, mind, and spirit. You didn't need to defend yourself because God was defending you. You didn't need to fight back with anger because God was elevating you to a place where the opinions of others no longer mattered. Consider the story of Jesus and the religious leaders of his time. The Pharisees, who were determined to discredit him and maintain control over the people, thought they had Jesus cornered. Time and again they tried to trap him in his words, to expose him as a false prophet. But Jesus didn't fight back with arguments or accusations. He didn't need to. Instead, he responded with wisdom that they couldn't refute. In Matthew 22:46 we read, "No one could say a word in reply, and from that day on no one dared to ask him any more questions." Jesus didn't shout his truth, he simply lived it. His quiet wisdom and authority left his opponents reeling, unable to respond or challenge him. Similarly, when you choose to rise above the noise, when you trust in God's work within you, you become a living testimony to the fact that growth in Christ doesn't need to shout to be heard. The real victory is in your transformation, the quiet strength you gain as you outgrow the expectations that others have placed on you. The beauty of God's work in your life is that it doesn't always come in loud moments of confrontation or dramatic victories. Sometimes it is the quiet behind-the-scenes transformation that brings about the most powerful shifts. This process of inner growth is like a seed planted in the ground. At first, there is no outward sign of life, no visible change. But over time, the seed begins to sprout, growing roots deep into the soil of faith and eventually emerging as something beautiful and strong. The Apostle Paul is a perfect example of this kind of transformation. Before becoming a follower of Christ, Paul, then Saul, was one of the greatest persecutors of Christians. He sought to destroy the early church, thinking he was doing the work of God. But on the road to Damascus, he had a life-changing encounter with Jesus, and in that moment his entire life was transformed. For 3 days he was blind, unable to see. But in that silence, God was doing something profound. He was preparing Paul for a new purpose, one that would change the world. Paul's transformation wasn't immediate or loud. It took time, prayer, and quiet moments of surrender. Yet through this process, God elevated him to a place of prominence and influence in the early church. In 2 Corinthians 12:9, Paul writes, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me." Paul's victory came not through force or pride, but through surrender, humility, and a quiet reliance on God's strength. Like Paul, your journey of transformation might not always be visible to others, but God is doing something powerful in you. As you walk in obedience, trust, and humility, you're evolving in ways that will be undeniable when the time comes. Your opponents, those who once underestimated you, will be left stunned, unable to understand how you rose above what they thought would hold you back. The ultimate victory comes when you realize that the battle isn't about proving yourself to others, it's about aligning yourself with God's purpose. It's about stepping into the calling that He has placed on your life, trusting that His timing is perfect and His plan is good. The chessboard analogy is fitting because just like a strategic game of chess, God sees the entire board. He knows the moves, the timing, and the perfect moment for you to make your move. In your life, this move will not come from a place of anger or pride. It will come from a place of divine wisdom, the quiet work of God transforming you from the inside out. As you walk forward in faith, the people who once thought they had you cornered will see that they underestimated you. What they failed to recognize is that they were never really your opponent. The true victory was always in God's hands. Your faith, your growth, and your quiet elevation are the true checkmate, and they will not be silenced. As you trust in God step by step, your transformation will be the thing that speaks louder than any word or confrontation. You're no longer the person they thought they knew. You're a child of God walking in His purpose, and you are unforgettable. There are moments in life when your absence becomes far more powerful than your presence ever was. When you decide to step away from relationships, situations, or environments that no longer serve your purpose, the silence you leave behind speaks louder than any words could. It's as if your absence lingers in the air, haunting the very places you once inhabited. Those who once thought they had you, figured out those who underestimated you, will find that your absence becomes a reminder of your strength, your growth, and your transformation. You didn't need to shout, to argue, or to confront. You simply removed yourself, allowing God to elevate you in ways that they could never anticipate. Your absence has become a symbol of your power, of how much you've changed and grown. Every time they try to move forward or forget about you, your memory resurfaces like a quiet yet undeniable presence in their lives. They thought you would fade away, but instead you became an indelible part of their emotional landscape, a presence they can never erase. The story of Joseph in the Old Testament provides a powerful example of this silent haunting. After Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery, they likely thought they had rid themselves of him for good. But years later, when they were forced to go to Joseph, now a powerful ruler in Egypt, for help during a famine, they were confronted with the very brother they thought they had discarded. Joseph had risen to a position of influence, and his absence had haunted them for years. They had moved forward, but his memory, his absence, and his elevation had never left them. In Genesis 42:21, they confess, "Surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen." Just as Joseph's absence became a haunting reminder to his brothers, so too does your absence become a silent yet powerful reminder to those who tried to undermine you. They may never fully understand the impact of your silence, but it will remain a presence that shapes their lives. In psychology, there's a concept known as emotional shock, which occurs when an individual experiences a significant and unexpected emotional event. This shock often leads to long-lasting emotional impacts, shaping the way the person thinks, feels, and responds to the world around them. One of the most profound forms of emotional shock comes not through confrontation, but through silence when the person who once played a significant role in someone's life suddenly steps away or changes. The shift is jarring, unsettling, and leaves an emotional imprint that can never truly be erased. Just as the Apostle Paul experienced an emotional and spiritual shock when he encountered Jesus on the road to Damascus, many of us have experienced a transformation that shakes the very foundation of those around us. Saul, who later became Paul, was blinded by the light of Christ and forced to reckon with his past life of persecution. In Acts 9:3-6 we read, "As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, 'Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?' Saul's encounter with Christ was a shock that forever changed his life, and in the same way your own transformation, the quiet growth, the subtle elevation, becomes a shock to those who once thought they could predict your future. Your reinvention and elevation don't need to come with loud announcements or dramatic displays. Just as Paul's conversion was a silent but powerful internal shift, your transformation has created an emotional impact that will leave a lasting imprint on those who once tried to dismiss or control you. They may try to move on, but your silent growth, your inner strength, and your ability to evolve have become an emotional glitch they cannot shake. They're left to contend with the fact that you are no longer the person they thought you were, and they can't forget the version of you that has silently risen above their expectations. There's something incredibly powerful about reinvention, a quiet internal transformation that happens when we stop trying to conform to the world's expectations and start aligning ourselves with God's purpose. When you let go of the past, when you step into a new version of yourself that is aligned with God's will, it creates a shift that others cannot ignore. It's not loud, it's not confrontational, but it is deeply powerful. Consider the story of the prodigal son in Luke 15. After squandering his inheritance, the prodigal son found himself destitute, alone, and far from home. But his reinvention didn't happen in a dramatic public display. It happened in the quiet, humble realization that he needed to return to his father. When he did, his return wasn't marked by anger or bitterness, but by humility and repentance. His reinvention came not from outward circumstances, but from an internal shift in his heart. And when he returned to his father, he was met with grace, forgiveness, and celebration. But the father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet." Luke 15:22. The prodigal son's return wasn't loud, it was quietly transformative. Similarly, your own process of reinvention has not been about seeking validation from others or making a loud statement. It has been about your heart's transformation, your alignment with God's purpose, and your quiet but powerful rise above the expectations of others. What happens when you become the silent force that no one saw coming? What happens when your transformation is so profound that it reverberates in the lives of those around you, even when you are no longer present? You leave an indelible mark. This silent elevation, this quiet shift in your life, is more powerful than any confrontation or argument. It's the kind of victory that not only changes you, but changes the people around you. When Jesus healed the blind man in John 9, he didn't just give sight, he gave a testimony of God's power that could not be ignored. The Pharisees questioned the man, but his response was simple and profound. "One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see." John 9:25. The transformation was so evident that no one could deny it. Your transformation is your testimony. It is your silent victory, and it is the thing that will leave those who once underestimated you wondering what happened, trying to piece together how you managed to rise above what they thought was your lowest point. Your absence will become a quiet but powerful reminder of your strength and the power of God's work in your life. As you continue on your journey, Remember that the power of silence and elevation comes from trusting God's timing and His work in your life. The people who once underestimated you, who thought they could control or predict your future, will be left in awe of the quiet transformation that has taken place within you. You're no longer defined by their limitations or expectations. You're moving forward with confidence, knowing that God is the one who has elevated you. As Psalm 23:5 says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." Your victory is evident not in the battles fought or the loud victories won, but in the quiet elevation that leaves others in awe. Your journey is one of transformation, one that speaks louder than any words could. Continue to walk forward with confidence, knowing that the God who has elevated you will continue to lead you into the fullness of His purpose for your life. There's a power in walking away, especially when you've been underestimated, taken for granted, or misunderstood. Often we think that leaving a situation, relationship, or environment will let us escape the past. But in truth, when you leave with grace, with peace and with purpose, you leave an imprint that cannot be erased. Your peaceful departure becomes a mark on the souls of those who once had access to your life, leaving them with something they can never forget. It's not the noise of confrontation or the bitterness of a fight that lingers in their hearts. No, it's the silence of your departure. It's the calm assurance with which you walked away, choosing not to fight, but simply to trust God's plan for you. You didn't need to prove anything. Your absence itself became the greatest statement of all, and that statement echoed long after you were gone. This is similar to how David's departure from King Saul left an indelible mark. David could have fought Saul for the throne, but instead he honored God's timing and waited for the right moment. He walked away from a position of power and respect with humility, allowing God to make a way for him. Even though Saul initially pursued David with hatred and jealousy, it was David's integrity and trust in God's plan that left a lasting imprint. In 1 Samuel 24:12, David says to Saul, "May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me, but my hand will not touch you." David's refusal to act in vengeance left Saul with a haunting sense of loss. Saul couldn't forget the man he'd once respected, the man he'd tried to destroy. Your peaceful departure, chosen one, has a similar effect. Every experience they encounter, every person they meet, will remind them of you, of your strength, your peace, and your unwavering trust in God. And in comparison, nothing else will measure up. What happens when you walk away in silence? When you choose not to fight, but to trust in God's timing and walk in faith, the impact isn't immediate, but it's profound. Over time, those who once took you for granted will be haunted by the echo of your absence. They will question how they ever lost someone like you. This isn't a revengeful haunting, it's the quiet reverberation of your transformation, your elevation, and your choice to move forward in God's grace. The victory that others thought would be temporary, something that would fade once you are out of sight, becomes something they cannot shake. They may try to forget you, move on, or replace you with someone or something else, but deep down they will always compare everything to you, and nothing will measure up. Consider the story of the prophet Elijah, who had a powerful and unexpected departure. After his dramatic victory on Mount Carmel, where he confronted the prophets of Baal and called down fire from heaven, 1 Kings 18, Elijah's ministry seemed to peak. But in the following chapter, after a threat from Queen Jezebel, Elijah fled into the wilderness, feeling defeated and alone. It was in this wilderness, however, that God spoke to him in a still small voice, 1 Kings 19:12, showing Elijah that his work was not over. Elijah's silent retreat and trust in God's direction left an impact on those around him. Even after he was taken up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah's legacy lived on. His influence continued to reverberate through Israel's prophets and the future of the nation. Elijah's peaceful departure, much like yours, didn't signal an end, it signaled the beginning of something more. In the same way, your quiet strength, your decision to move on, and your trust in God's plan leave a haunting echo. Your soul-level victory, one that isn't loud or boastful, has changed the atmosphere around those who once took you for granted. They're left wondering how they could have ever let someone as significant as you slip away, and they will never quite find the peace they once had when you were in their lives. The difference between an emotional victory and a soul-level victory is profound. Emotional victories are often fleeting. They may provide a temporary sense of satisfaction or relief. But a soul-level victory is transformative. It touches the very core of who we are and changes the trajectory of our lives. When God works in our hearts, the changes He brings aren't temporary. They are eternal. For you, chosen one, your victory wasn't in outshouting others or making a dramatic exit. Your victory was in outgrowing what held you back. It was in trusting God enough to walk away from things, people and situations that no longer served His purpose for you. Your transformation has been internal, and as it's unfolded, it has impacted not only your life, but also those who once underestimated you. Think of the story of Job, whose life was upended by loss, suffering, and betrayal. His friends, who once sat with him in sympathy, tried to convince him that his suffering was a result of his sin. But Job, through his quiet endurance, found a deeper connection with God. In the end, Job's faith was rewarded not just in material wealth, but in an intimate understanding of God's sovereignty. I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. Job 42:2. Job's victory wasn't in fighting back. It was in trusting God's purpose for his life, even when it made no sense. Your own journey mirrors this. The power of your soul-level victory doesn't lie in confrontation or defense. It lies in your quiet strength and trust in God's guidance. This transformation, this elevation, becomes the thing that others cannot forget. Your peaceful departure isn't a sign of weakness. It's a testament to your strength, your faith, and your obedience to God's will. As you continue to move forward, those who once took you for granted will be left with an unanswered question. How could I have let someone like you go? It's not a question they can easily answer, and the more they try to avoid it, the more it gnaws at them. They'll realize that they can't find anyone like you, someone who moved forward with grace, who walked away without anger but with purpose. Your absence will leave a void that they can't fill. But as you walk into your new season, remember this. You're not defined by how others see you or how they choose to value you. Your worth is in the eyes of the one who created you, and He has called you to something greater. You've stepped into a purpose far beyond their expectations, and though they may be haunted by your absence, you have been elevated to a place where God is doing new and greater things in your life. Your victory isn't just for you, it's a testimony of God's grace, power, and timing. And as those who once underestimated you see your transformation, they will come to realize that the true power was never in holding on to the past, but in releasing it and trusting God's perfect plan. Your journey is far from over, chosen one. The reverberations of your transformation will continue to echo, and your soul-level victory will carry you into a future full of God's purpose and promise. And those who once doubted you, they'll never forget the day you quietly but powerfully changed everything. In life, there are moments when you grow in ways that others didn't anticipate, ways that challenge their perception of you and sometimes expose their own stagnation. The journey of personal and spiritual growth can feel like an awakening, and for those who once knew you in a different place, it can be a painful reminder of how they've remained stuck. While you move forward, walking in the new things God has for you, others may struggle to move at all. Your progress becomes a silent reflection of their lack of movement, and though they might try to ignore it, they cannot unsee the evolution that has taken place within you. In the Bible, we see this dynamic play out in many stories, but perhaps none so poignantly as the story of the Apostle Paul. Before his encounter with Christ, Paul, then known as Saul, was a man of zeal for what he believed to be right, even going as far as persecuting Christians. But when Jesus met him on the road to Damascus, everything changed. Saul's life was radically transformed, and he became Paul, the most influential missionary in Christian history. To those who knew him before his transformation, must have been a shock. His growth, his new purpose exposed the stagnation of his previous life. The very thing that changed Paul's life, his deepened faith and transformation, became a reminder to those who had stayed stuck in the old ways. This is the reality that some people in your life are facing right now. As you evolve, growing in faith, in character and in purpose, the contrast between where you are and where they are becomes undeniable. Your progress forces them to confront their own lack of movement, and it stirs feelings they may not want to face. They may feel trapped in their own cycle of complacency, too afraid to embrace change while you step boldly into the future God has designed for you. Your growth can be both inspiring and uncomfortable to them. You're becoming someone they never expected, and in doing so you force them to see something they can't ignore, the cost of their own stagnation. Your evolution isn't just about you, it also serves as a reflection of the past for those who once knew you. For some, this reflection brings pain. Every time they scroll through your social media, look back at old photos or reminisce about the past, they are reminded of the person you were. And while that person may have been familiar, comfortable, or predictable, they can now see the gap between who you once were and who you've become. This type of transformation often stirs regret in others because it highlights what they have lost, something irreplaceable. When you were in their lives, they may have taken you for granted, assuming you would always be the same person stuck in the same place. But as you grow, they realize that they no longer have access to the version of you they once knew. They see the strength in your quiet growth, and it stirs a deep regret for the ways they didn't value or appreciate you. Just as the prodigal son's return brought deep reflection and regret to his older brother, whose heart was filled with jealousy and bitterness. Luke 15:25. 30 So too do the ones who once knew you have a similar emotional reckoning. They see the change in you, but instead of celebrating it, they are haunted by it. The prodigal son's older brother couldn't understand why his father would welcome the wayward son back with open arms after all he had done. Similarly, those who've watched your transformation may feel a sense of loss even if they cannot fully articulate it. They never thought you would grow beyond them, but now you have, and they're left wondering why they didn't see your worth when you were still with them. The regret that others feel when they witness your growth is palpable. They realize sometimes too late that they missed the chance to truly appreciate the depth of who you are. The sadness of this regret isn't just about a loss of a relationship, but about the loss of what you brought to their lives. You were once a part of their story, and now because of your transformation you are no longer the same. In Matthew 7:6, Jesus says, "Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces." This verse speaks to the idea that we must not waste our time and energy on people who don't recognize the value within us. At one point, perhaps they failed to see the treasure in you, taking it for granted, but now as you evolve, they see your worth, only it's too late to reclaim what they once disregarded. This is a painful yet powerful truth. Your transformation has made you irreplaceable. They will never again have the person they once knew. And with every reminder, whether through social media, a memory, or a fleeting moment, their regret deepens. The same way the Israelites cried out to God, lamenting their loss of His presence after straying from His path, so do those who once took you for granted feel the weight of their lost opportunity. They may never admit it, but deep down they long for the version of you they failed to appreciate. The beauty of this evolution is that it's not about what others think or feel, it's about what God is doing in your life. Your growth was never meant to serve as a reminder of someone else's shortcomings. It was meant to bring you closer to the divine purpose God has for you. And while those around you may not fully understand or accept your transformation, God is the one who has been leading you. Your worth and your journey are not defined by the approval of others, but by the plan He has for you. In 1 Peter 2:9 we are reminded, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into His wonderful light." You've been called into something greater, and as you grow you reflect that divine light. Your evolution is not just for your own benefit, it is a testament to God's glory. And as you embrace this growth, you'll find that the regret of others doesn't bind you but frees you to walk in the fullness of God's plan for your life. Ultimately, the journey you're on is between you and God. The people who once underestimated you, who failed to recognize your value, will have to reconcile with the truth that your progress is not their responsibility, nor is it their loss to manage. They will have to face the fact that while they stayed stuck, you moved forward. And although they may regret their actions, you're not called to look back at what was. You're called to keep moving forward. In Philippians 3:13-14, Paul encourages believers to forget what is behind and strain toward what is ahead. "I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus." Like Paul, you must keep your eyes focused on what God is doing in your life. Your progress isn't just for others, it is for the fulfillment of God's purpose for you. Those who underestimated you will see that you have become someone they cannot unsee, and that is the power of God's work in your life. Your transformation has made you irreplaceable, and as you continue to walk forward in faith, your life will be a testimony to the incredible ways God works through those who trust Him and choose to evolve into the person He created them to be. There's a quiet, often unnoticed power in absence. When you choose to walk away from situations or relationships that no longer serve your purpose. Your absence can leave a lasting impact, one that no amount of time can erase. People often don't realize what they have until it's gone, and your departure has become a haunting reminder of the person you once were to them. The things they once took for granted about you, your kindness, your loyalty, your presence, are now the standard by which they measure everyone else. As you moved forward and evolved, those around you became aware of your value in ways they never appreciated while you were still present. Every new person they meet, every new experience they have is now compared to the memory of you, but no one seems to measure up. They may try to fill the void with distractions or new connections, but the space you left cannot be easily filled. You became the standard, the benchmark by which they measure the worth of others. In the Bible, we see how the Israelites failed to appreciate the blessings and presence of God when He was with them. After being freed from Egypt, they longed for the comforts of their past and complained about the manna God provided in the wilderness. In Numbers 11:5, 6, they said, "We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost. Also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now we have lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna." They had taken God's provision for granted, only to realize later that what they had left behind was irreplaceable. Similarly, those who once had you in their lives may not have fully recognized your worth until you are gone. Their attempts to compare others to you will always fall short because you were a unique gift in their lives, one they failed to cherish until it was too late. They now find themselves haunted by your absence, unable to fill the void you left behind. The most difficult part of your absence for them isn't just the fact that you're gone, it's the realization that they never truly had control over you. People who try to control others often do so because they believe they can manipulate situations to serve their own agendas. They may have thought that by controlling you or limiting your growth, they could keep you close. keep you predictable, keep you under their thumb, but they never had the control they assumed they did. As you moved forward, you stepped out of the shadows of their expectations, and in doing so you demonstrated the power of your own will and the strength of God working in your life. This realization, this understanding that they had no true control over you, has become a source of deep regret. It keeps them awake at night, wondering why they didn't see your potential, why they didn't value you when they had the chance. This is reminiscent of the story of King Saul and David. Saul, in his jealousy and fear, tried to control David, even seeking to kill him out of a sense of insecurity. He saw David's rising popularity as a threat to his own power, yet despite Saul's attempts to control him, David refused to take matters into his own hands and kill Saul, knowing that it was not his place. In 1 Samuel 24:12, David says to Saul, "May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me, but my hand will not touch you." David's refusal to be controlled, his decision to trust God's timing, left Saul with a deep awareness that he could never truly control David. Similarly, those who try to manipulate or control you will eventually realize that they never had the power they thought they did. Your strength and your independence were never about rebellion, but about trusting God's plan for your life. They may regret not recognizing that sooner, realizing that their efforts to control you only kept them in a place of spiritual blindness, unable to see the depth of what God was doing in you. For those who once had you in their lives, the wake-up call often comes too late. They might go through the motions of trying to replace you or find someone else who can fulfill the role you once held, but it will never be the same. Your absence will linger in their thoughts, and their regret will be a constant reminder of how they mishandled the relationship. No matter how many new people they meet or how many new experiences they try to have, they will always compare them to you. And the truth is, no one will ever be able to replace the unique contribution you made to their lives. In Psalm 139:16, David acknowledges that God has a plan for each of us, saying, "Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." God has a unique plan for each of us, and part of that plan often involves moving away from situations or relationships that are not aligned with His purpose for us. When you walk away, you don't just leave a physical absence, you leave a spiritual mark that those who once tried to control you will not be able to erase. They'll continue to reflect on the things they took for granted, realizing that they let something irreplaceable slip away. For you, the journey of moving forward is not about making others regret your absence, but about embracing the plan God has set before you. You're not defined by their opinions, and your worth is not tied to how they perceive you. The call is to release the past, to forgive those who didn't understand your value, and to trust that God's plan for you is greater than any past relationship or situation. In Matthew 5:44, Jesus calls us to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us. While this may be difficult, it's also a necessary step toward freedom. When you release the past and forgive those who underestimated you, you open the door to greater peace and fulfillment in your life. You allow God to heal the wounds and fill the space left by your absence with His love and purpose. This doesn't mean you go back to those who failed to recognize your worth. It means you move forward, trusting that God is taking you to a place where you can fulfill His purpose for your life. You're not defined by the regret of others, but by the grace and love of God. As you continue on your journey, remember that God is the one who redeems and restores. He takes what was broken, what was undervalued, and makes it new. Your absence has become a catalyst for change, not only in your own life, but in the lives of those around you. You may not be able to change the past, but you can choose to live in the fullness of the future God has prepared for you. In Isaiah 43:18-19, God speaks to the Israelites saying, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it just as God calls the Israelites to leave behind their past in order to embrace the new things he is doing? So too is he calling you to embrace the future. Your absence, while it may have left a void, is part of God's greater plan to help you become who he has always destined you to be. They may never fully understand or acknowledge the impact of your absence, but you're walking into a new season of growth, purpose and peace. Your journey is not about them. It's about fulfilling the calling God has placed on your life. Trust that God is with you every step of the way and know that his plans for you are good, full of hope and filled with a future that is brighter than you could have ever imagined. When you chose to leave, it wasn't out of anger, revenge or spite. It wasn't about showing them how wrong they were or seeking retribution for the hurt they caused. Instead, it was about growth. You chose to walk away because you'd finally come to a place where you realized you deserved more. More peace, more clarity, more freedom. You chose yourself over the dysfunction that once held you captive, and in doing so you made the choice to prioritize your own spiritual, emotional and mental well-being. In the Bible, we are often called to let go of the old in order to embrace the new things God is doing in our lives. In 2 Corinthians 5:17, Paul reminds us, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone, the new is here." This verse speaks to the transformation that takes place when we decide to walk in God's will, leaving behind the old patterns, relationships, and situations that keep us stuck in the past. The act of leaving is not always about closing the door on others, but choosing to walk in a new direction, one that leads you closer to your true purpose. There's power in choosing yourself when others can't see your worth. It's a choice that God honors because it reflects his love and care for you. He knows that when you step away from toxic environments, you're stepping into his higher calling for your life, one that is filled with peace, purpose, and his perfect plan for you. This is not a decision made out of spite, but out of the recognition that you are worthy of more than the dysfunction you've been settling for. Your true strength lies not in the loud, dramatic moments, but in the quiet peace you now carry with you. The peace that comes from walking away from what no longer serves you, from releasing the toxic relationships or situations, is unshakable. This peace is not something that can be disturbed by others or by the circumstances that once controlled your life. It's a peace that surpasses understanding, a peace that only God can give. Jesus speaks of this peace in John 14:27, where he says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." This peace is not dependent on external circumstances. It's a deep inner peace that comes from knowing that God is in control, that he is leading you, and that his plan for you is always for your good. You no longer feel the need to engage in the drama, to seek approval, or to fight for validation. You've moved on to a higher level one where your worth is not tied to the opinions or behaviors of others. Your quiet strength comes from the confidence that you are exactly where God wants you to be. The chaos that once surrounded you has no power over you because you have chosen peace. When the Israelites were in the wilderness, God provided them with the peace of his presence even as they faced challenges and opposition. In Exodus 14:14, Moses tells the people, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." In the same way, you've learned that your peace comes from trusting that God is fighting your battles for you. You don't need to fight for your place, your worth, or your peace. God is already working on your behalf, and that gives you the strength to move forward in silence, knowing that his plan is unfolding in your life. When you moved on, you didn't just leave behind people or situations. You moved into a higher realm of understanding. You left behind old patterns of thinking, toxic dynamics, and a life defined by someone else's expectations. You chose to elevate yourself, trusting that God's purpose for you was greater than anything you could hold on to from the past. In Psalm 23:5, David speaks of God's provision. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. This verse speaks to the peace that comes from knowing that God is with you, even when others try to drag you back into old habits or situations. God has prepared something greater for you, and He will guide you into it as you trust Him. Your decision to walk away from unhealthy situations was the key that unlocked the door to something greater, God's plans for your future. You may have been manipulated, controlled, or pushed into corners by others in the past, but now you stand firm in the peace that comes from knowing you have moved on. Your progress isn't defined by anyone else's actions or reactions. It is defined by your alignment with God's purpose and your willingness to trust His plan. The most powerful thing about your growth is that you are no longer susceptible to manipulation. Those who once tried to control or influence your decisions have no power over you anymore. You've moved beyond their reach, and they can no longer pull you back into the world they once tried to shape you into. This transformation is like the story of Joseph. When his brothers sold him into slavery, they thought they had gotten rid of him for good. But God had a greater plan. Joseph's rise in Egypt from prisoner to second in command was a testimony of God's faithfulness and the strength of Joseph's character. When Joseph's brothers finally came to him during a famine, they were forced to confront the very brother they had betrayed. But Joseph had no desire for revenge. Instead, he said to them, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Genesis 50:20. Just as Joseph's brothers could no longer control him or manipulate him, so too have you broken free from the control of those who once sought to influence your decisions. You're no longer bound by their opinions or actions. Your strength comes from knowing that God is the one who directs your steps, and nothing can separate you from His will for your life. The true checkmate in your life isn't in any dramatic confrontation or a final act of revenge. The true victory lies in your quiet elevation, your ability to move on, to rise above, and to walk confidently in the peace that God has given you. When you walked away, you didn't just leave behind a situation. You left behind the need for validation and the desire for approval. In 1 John 4:4 we are reminded, "You, dear children, are from God and have overcome them, because the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world." The strength and peace you now carry is not your own. It is the result of the work God has done in you. And when you trusted God enough to move on, you made the choice to walk into the life He'd prepared for you, a life filled with purpose, peace, and divine strength. In the end, those who once tried to control you, who tried to manipulate or diminish you, will realize that they could never hold you back. The true checkmate was not in the noise of their actions, but in the quiet power of your evolution, the peaceful strength that comes from trusting in God's plan. You're no longer defined by their limitations. You're defined by the strength and peace that God has given you, and you're walking in the victory that only He could provide. There comes a point in your life when you stop playing by the rules that others set for you. You stop adhering to the expectations they have placed on you, and you begin to create your own path, your own rules, and your own destiny. This is when you become an unbeatable force, not because you are invincible, but because you've found the power in being true to yourself and in trusting God's guidance. When you break free from the constraints of others' expectations, you enter a new game, one that is not defined by the limitations they tried to impose on you. The world around you may try to set boundaries, to judge you, or to predict your future, but you've broken free of that. You've learned to rely on God's direction and His purpose for your life, and in doing so, you have become unstoppable. The story of Daniel in the Old Testament provides a powerful example of this. Daniel, a young man taken into exile in Babylon, found himself in a foreign land, surrounded by people who worship different gods and follow different customs. Despite the challenges, Daniel remained faithful to God and refused to bow to the pressures around him. When King Darius issued a decree that no one could pray to anyone except him, Daniel chose to continue praying to God regardless of the consequences. His decision was not just an act of defiance, it was a declaration that he would not be confined by the rules of the world. As a result, Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, but God protected him and he emerged unharmed. Daniel's actions were a demonstration of his refusal to play by the world's rules. He created his own path, trusting in God's sovereignty, and his faith became a living testimony to the power of trusting God. Similarly, when you stop playing by others' rules and embrace the life that God has called you to, you become an unbeatable force, one that the world cannot control. Your evolution, the transformation you've undergone, is not just a personal journey, it is a spiritual declaration. It is a testimony to the fact that growth and change are not only possible, but are part of God's divine plan for you. When you evolve, when you move from a place of limitation to a place of empowerment, you're showing the world the power of God's work in your life. In Romans 12:2 we are instructed, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing and perfect will." This verse speaks to the importance of transformation. It is not just a change in your external circumstances, but a shift in the way you think, act and live. When you allow God to renew your mind, you begin to see the world through his eyes, and you no longer live by the standards of the world. Your evolution is a declaration of what is possible when you trust in God's plan for your life. You have shown that it is possible to rise above the limitations of the past, to break free from toxic patterns, and to step into the fullness of the life God has prepared for you. The very fact that you have transformed from someone who was once constrained to someone who now walks in freedom and purpose is a testament to God's power in your life. In the story of Saul's transformation into Paul, we see a profound example of spiritual evolution. Saul was once a fierce persecutor of Christians, but after encountering Jesus on the road to Damascus, he was blinded for 3 days. During this time, Saul's heart was transformed, and when his sight was restored, he was no longer Saul, but Paul, the greatest missionary the world has ever known. This transformation wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. Paul's evolution was a powerful declaration that no one is beyond God's reach, and no past is too dark for God to redeem. Similarly, your evolution is not just personal growth, it is a spiritual statement. You are the proof that transformation is possible. Your life is a living example of God's grace power and ability to make all things new. And as others watch your evolution, they are reminded of their own limitations. They see what's possible when they align their lives with God's purpose, and they are challenged to question the paths they have chosen. Your transformation serves as both an inspiration and a reminder to them that they too can break free from the patterns that hold them back. Your evolution not only impacts your own life, but serves as a reminder to those who once underestimated you of their own limitations. The very fact that you've moved forward, that you've evolved beyond the confines of their expectations, challenges their assumptions about themselves and the world around them. They see you growing, changing and thriving in ways they never expected, and it forces them to confront the reality that they are still stuck in the same place. This can be a painful realization for those who tried to hold you back. When you broke free from the expectations they placed on you, you forced them to face the fact that they were content with stagnation while you were moving forward into God's plans. Just as the Pharisees were threatened by the transformation of Jesus' followers because they had become a living testimony to the truth that they had not yet embraced. Those around you are challenged by your progress. You've become a mirror of the growth they have not yet allowed themselves to experience. In 2 Corinthians 3:18, Paul writes, "And we all who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord who is the Spirit." This verse speaks to the power of spiritual evolution. As we grow in our relationship with God, we become more like Him, and our transformation becomes a visible sign of His work in our lives. The more we reflect God's glory, the more we challenge others to reflect on their own lives and the areas where they have yet to grow. You've become a living testament to the power of God to transform lives, and your evolution has made others question the limitations they have placed on themselves. They now see that the person they once knew, the person who may have been trapped by their circumstances or limitations, has now risen to a place of strength, clarity, and purpose. And in this they are reminded of their own stagnation. Your evolution is not about proving others wrong, it's about walking in the fullness of the life God has prepared for you. You're no longer defined by what others thought you could be. You're walking forward in power, knowing that the same God who has transformed your life is continuing to lead you into your destiny. In Philippians 3:14, Paul encourages us to forget what is behind and strain toward what is ahead. I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. This is your call, chosen one, to keep moving forward, to press on with faith and purpose, knowing that the path God has for you is greater than anything the world could offer. As you move forward, don't be distracted by those who are still stuck in the past. Don't allow their limitations to determine your future. You have created your own game, one that is defined by God's purpose and your evolution. Your progress is not just about you, it's a spiritual statement that transformation is possible. Keep walking in the power that comes from knowing who you are in Christ and the purpose He has for you. You have become an unbeatable force and nothing can stand in your way. Keep moving forward, there is more to come. They may still try to drag you back into their old games, attempting to pull you into the drama and manipulation you once knew. But you have moved beyond that. You are not the same person who once walked away. The old you, the one they thought they could control, is gone. You are now a new creation, one that they can never fully grasp or define. You've transcended their world, and that alone makes you unforgettable. You've lived your own story, not bound by the expectations or limitations others tried to impose on you. You've learned to embrace the life God has planned for you, and this new version of yourself is not subject to anyone else's control or influence. In this journey, you have grown spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. You've cultivated strength in areas you once thought impossible. They're left with only a memory of who you once were, a version of you that they believed they could keep in their grasp. But now they see someone transform, someone whose spirit cannot be shaken or confined. You didn't just leave, you created a ripple that continues to haunt them. Your evolution has left an indelible mark, one they cannot erase. Every time they try to move forward, they are reminded of the checkmate you delivered. The victory isn't defined by their failure, but by your strength and your ability to evolve beyond them. You closed the chapter for yourself, and now the true victory belongs to you. Heavenly Father, thank you for guiding me through the journey of self-discovery and growth. I release all ties to the past and choose to walk in the strength and peace you have given me. May I continue to grow in wisdom and rise above every challenge. Help me stay focused on your purpose and trust in your divine plan. In Jesus' name, amen.